Shakespeare's Macbeth. The Colour of Blood. In this video, I want to consider a highly dramatic moment in Shakespeare's play, Macbeth, with particular focus on 3.5 lines of verse spoken by Macbeth himself. The dramatic moment comes very near the end of Act 2, Scene 2, a scene that's charged throughout with crackling tension as Macbeth and Lady Macbeth react to the murder of King Duncan, which has just occurred off stage. Macbeth, his hands bloodied from having stabbed the king, is in a state of nervous paralysis, which means that he's still clutching the daggers he's used for the murder, as he's completely forgotten to plant the daggers on the king's drugged and unconscious servants in order to frame them for the deed. Lady Macbeth tells him to get a grip of himself and return to the king's chamber to smear the servants with blood and put the daggers next to them. But Macbeth is so consumed with fear and loathing because of the murder he's committed that he refuses to do so. I'm going to read you the speech in which Lady Macbeth furiously berates her husband for his weakness before she exits the stage to do the deed of framing the servants herself. Infirm of purpose! Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms withal, for it must seem their guilt. Her words are terrifying in their determination to press ahead without any seeming reluctance to perform a gruesome and deeply immoral action. And her terrible show of inhuman bravado contrasts strikingly with Macbeth, left alone, trembling and helpless. For a few seconds, all is deathly still and quiet, and then the sound of a loud knocking comes from off stage, breaking the silence with a start. This is Macbeth's reaction. Whence is that knocking? How is it with me when every noise appalls me? What hands are here? They pluck out mine eyes. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No. This my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. I said at the beginning that I wanted to focus on 3.5 lines of verse spoken by Macbeth, and these lines come at the end of the speech I've just read. I'm going to give you them again. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No. This my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. These lines are, I believe, a perfect short example of Shakespeare's poetic genius at a moment of intense dramatic power. Consider how the lines work. First, there's the question that Macbeth asks, a classic rhetorical question in that the obvious answer, even before he goes on to give it, is a negative. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No. Of course it won't. because the cleansing required is not a physical one, but a moral one. The blood is a symbol of Macbeth's terrible guilt for the evil murder he's committed, murder of his host, his benefactor, his king. Guilt that cannot be washed away no matter how much water is used in the washing. The imagery used in the question is hyperbolical, deliberately exaggerated for the sake of effect, because of the very idea of an ocean being needed to wash Macbeth's hands. And the hyperbole is intensified in the mythical reference to great Neptune, one of the mighty gods of the classical world. As I've said, the no answer to the question is implicit in it, but Shakespeare goes on to make Macbeth give the answer explicitly, not just once, but twice, with the hyperbole initiated in the question running through both answers. The first time he answers is as follows: "No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine." I'll bring in a gloss here. Multitudinous means immensely numerous, and incarnadine, which is a verb, means to dye something deep red in colour. The opening of this answer, "No, this my hand will rather," is in simple English, but the words that follow, "the multitudinous seas incarnadine," are obviously not simple at all. In this phrase, the two polysyllabic words between them account for almost all the syllables in the decasyllabic line of blank verse. There's a sense of massiveness in having such words, a massiveness that echoes the sense of the gigantic ocean. And there's also a heightening, enlarging of language by using words derived from Latin. The second time Macbeth answers his own question is in totally different language, though it means the same thing as before: making the green one red. Again, to gloss, green here means the green colour of the sea, and one red means an unbroken total red in colour. Note how the Latinate polysyllabic language of the previous answer has vanished, to be replaced by an answer almost entirely in simple Anglo-Saxon monosyllables. This radical change brings the language register down from its previous height, but also serves to drive the same meaning home in words that are clean, clear, and direct. So, in these two answers, Shakespeare has Macbeth say things twice for emphasis, though the repetition of the same point, that not all the water in the world is enough to cleanse him, is done with highly inventive variation. This variation or contrast between the two answers also comes in the speed of their delivery. To say the polysyllables multitudinous and incarnadine involves running the syllables on without hesitation, but saying making the green one red, saying it in a way that makes good sense, means that a slight pause is needed after the word green, and one red should be said in a deliberate, slow manner. The fact that the speech concludes with three stressed syllables in a row, green, one, red, deprives it of the momentum normally given by the alternating unstressed and stressed syllables of standard blank verse. So there's a sense of deceleration and coming to a very definite halt. These lines of verse end with a half line that isn't completed by a half line of reply from Lady Macbeth, which means that Shakespeare's signalling a pause on stage before Lady Macbeth enters and speaks again, a pause in which the poetic power of Macbeth's speech is appropriately followed by a short period of reflexive silence on stage. And what is the final image left at the end of the speech? It's Macbeth's trauma-induced, semi-delirious vision of a singular entity so gigantic that in a sense it's also a kind of plural, a singular that contains multitudes, making the green one red. When Macbeth asks the rhetorical question that prompts his two answers, he asks it using the same kind of gigantic singular, great Neptune's ocean. His first answer to this question shifts into an actual grammatical plural, the multitudinous seas, as though he's spelling out the plural potential of the word ocean, before returning to the huge singular of one red at the end. This final massive singular, this one red, may be said to define all the days of Macbeth's life, from the time that he murders his king to the time that he's eventually killed himself. Each day, and there will be more than he would wish to have, as life hangs increasingly like a dead weight on him. Each day will differ in the sense that the actual events will vary. But the essential character of the long string of days will be marked by one monotonously unbroken, unending, unbearable colour. The colour of blood. Thank you for listening.